trust it.
Cheers. Thank you, Brian.
All you.
No, it's awesome to come out here and thank you. And that was a really awesome presentation from.
Nikita's not there.
Oh, there she is. Thank you, Nikita. That was fantastic. I was just telling Brian over here, I was a little bit sad because you were talking about fallible humans and infallible systems. Well, now we're going to be talking about fallible systems. So, you know, this would be a fun conversation. I've been in Bend for 10, 11 years now. I run a local meetup group called Cloud Beers. We just get together to talk about cloud stuff. And technology stuff in general at this point. I'm kind of sick of both cloud and beer at this point, frankly. But it's been a fun little social meetup. Check us out on a LinkedIn page. It's a monthly rotation. And come out and follow. No need to RSVP, just show up if you could make it. I've been in the cloud space for about 15 years, about since the time it started. Worked for a company called RightScale way back in the day, which was the very first cloud management platform. And, you know, so just kind of been in and around the tech industry for a while. Now I'm a consultant, mattasmall.com. Check me out on LinkedIn, email me, and you can see the theme. I help small startups primarily figure out how to take their products to market, figure out how to sell them, figure out how to support customers, support their revenue operations. I also consult on cloud and AI implementations. Beyond that, my startup here in Bend, Lucid Cradle, with my wife. My wife runs one of the very first psilocybin service centers here in Bend, Oregon. We've been open since September, so check that out, lucidcradle.com. Stable Pathways Group is my sister company. We provide destination management services for the out-of-towners that are coming in to experience magic mushrooms. We take care of all the rest of their logistics for them while they're here. Ben Guys for Good is a philanthropy group. Please, thank you, Jed, for coming out tonight. Another a good guy, Ben. Many of you would love to see you out there. There's also Ben Professional Women for Good. What this is a giving circle. We just get together for the express purpose of raising some money and donating it to a local nonprofit. And, you know, we get together, have a good time, and, you know, chat about good things. It's not all tech all the time, which is kind of refreshing. Cloud Beers, talked about it, and Kwaai. This is how I got into the AI world. Kwaai is an open source AI, a nonprofit open source AI lab, building a personal AI operating system. And I'm actually going to start there. Our premise at Kwaai is that you need to own your own AI. The big services are working against you, and this technology is really going to only enable all of us is if we can run it ourselves on our own retained private data. And so that's really what a personal AI operating system is all about. We need to look at how do we interchange the parts of that with new models, new technologies, new interfaces, new data. And so that's really the problems that we're trying to solve in development. We're also trying to figure out how to make this run cheaply for everybody. So one of the projects right now we're looking at is trying to figure out a distributed community inference engine. If you don't have enough compute capacity to run an AI query on your own device, maybe a community of trusted providers can help you. So there's a lot of exploration of how can we actually democratize this and using this in the actual word of giving everybody a vote as to where this thing's going. Check out, if you're traveling around, we're doing some hackathons all across the country this summer. PyPalooza, check it out, pypalooza.com. Austin, there's one in Seattle coming up next month, a bunch of stuff happening. Just get together people to hack on this stuff.
Are you going to have one here, Matt?
Hey, if we can get a sponsor, we can definitely bring a PyPalooza to Bend. OSU, want to sponsor? Let's bring some cool AI thinkers.
Aren't here, but I'm sure they'd love to talk with you.
We are developing actually a beta program. We're in a beta program right now for colleges and universities. Developing, these are RAG-bots. I'll talk a little about what that means, but developing what it could look like to have virtual teachers assistants. Supporting teachers and or students and or how does that actually get implemented, who's that good for and why. Final plug here, check us out Fridays, 10 a.m. Pacific, that's our weekly public meeting on Google Meet. Just go to kwaai.ai, you can add the invite to your calendar, it's Google Meet, show up, it's usually about 40-50 of us talking about AI stuff, there's cool lightning talks and just a great community to get involved with. So as I started learning a lot about artificial intelligence, I had to take a step back and start learning a lot more about intelligence because it turns out we don't have great definitions of that. Mathematicians like to think, hey, this is all about pattern recognition. Computer scientists like to ascribe human-like qualities to those things. But as we go around the spectrum, there are so many perspectives on what intelligence actually is. And the important thing just to remember here as we go forward in artificial intelligence is that us tech folk in the room don't have the monopoly on what that actually means. Let's all take a broader perspective. Let's take some broader opinions about what intelligence can mean before we start going and defining and operationalizing all of those various and optimizing all of those things, like we know what to do. So what is artificial intelligence? Well, some people can refer to it as a stochastic parrot. I heard somebody refer to it as a stochastic slot machine. That was kind of a cool idea. So that was kind of Zoltan there. Artificial intelligence, really simply put, is a utility service for information. I'm not talking about the veracity of the information or the trustworthiness of the information, but it produces information. And rule 1 of the internet applies: if you're not paying for it, you're the product. Please just remember that. This does not apply to the companies that are not paying for it and building the products. I will simply say to that these systems would not be nearly as capable if they were properly licensed. AI refers to now primarily generative AI, but that's really just the kernel of a whole lot of concentric circles of research that has been going on for years and years and years and years. Ask any AI researcher that's been involved in this for the past 10, and they will hang their head in sadness as to how a lot of the things have been bastardized and changed. Just remember that there's a lot in this, and so-called AI experts, or myself included, we might know little pieces of this, but there's a broad puzzle here. The two that I tend to pay attention to: classifier AI and generative AI. Classifier AI is just the concept of take a lot of data and figure out what you're looking for and try to find that. So a good example of a classifier AI or discriminator AI would be searching for cancer screening, lung cancer screenings out of lung cancer scan images. So we know what that looks like. A bunch of doctors have labeled that. Yep, that's cancer. No, that's not cancer. And we can put that all through a funnel and send a bunch of images through and try to find the cancer. Generative AI takes a thin input, meaning very little input. I can say, hey, ChatGPT, write me 1,000 words, and it will write 1,000 words. Which 1,000 words it's going to suggest. So it takes a thin input, does some calculations, predicts some next tokens, and blasts out a big fat output for you. And that's kind of just changing the model a little bit. Those two popular types here, large language models, these are text, these guess the next text token, and diffusion models, these guess the next pixel over to generate an image. These language models, I like to think, hey, if I ask you all, hey, describe the sky is cloudy out here. Oh gosh. All right, I'm trying. Sky is blue. Thank you. Yeah, predictable answer to that. If you asked a mountain of information, the answer to the sky is, the next likely prediction is going to be blue. And that's how these large language models come up with their eloquence. Diffusion models actually work really kind of an interesting way here. They take a bunch of images and then they start adding noise to them, adding noise, adding noise, adding noise, adding noise, until it's all noise. And then they have a bunch of data that's all noised up photos, and you ask it, that bunch of data is all noised up photos, and then they reverse the process. Give me a statue, and it denoises a statue out of all of those. So guessing the next best pixel out of having fuzzed up a bunch of other images. A hosted language model service, tends to look like this. A user will be interacting with a service. Those services are hosted. You don't control any of that on your local machine. Ask a prompt. There'll be some type of interface to that system. The language model kind of sits in the middle of that with maybe a text-based interface, chatbot, talking head. They'll have a place for you to put some data, upload a document. And they'll likely connect to some services. Microsoft, for example, connects to all the Microsoft services in the back end. When you have a request, you ask a prompt. That might wash through some user custom instructions. You can say things like, hey, talk to me like I'm in 11th grade, not 5-year-old. And it will try to modify your responses that way. Then it washes through another layer, the system prompt. And the system prompt is what You can actually, these things leak all the time from OpenAI. It's basically what they tell GPT, the language model, how to behave as ChatGPT. They say, you are ChatGPT, today's date is nah, here's how you should respond to users. That's when you get your response. The user can control the prompt. You can control some of your custom settings. You can upload data, but you can't actually control what they're doing with it in a hosted service. You can maybe be able to control some of the connected services, but some of them are going to be controlled by that provider as well. And you can never control the system prompt. And those system prompts actually include instructions like rewrite the prompt if. So what you should just remember in all of this is whatever you say isn't necessarily what comes back. It's been modified and it's been changed. And there's two places that can be introduced. It can either be introduced in what's referred to as the bias of the training data, meaning we took a mountain of data and it's finding the average in it, and the average looks like this. If I ask a language model, how do I grow corn, it's not going to give me any information about how a Native American grows corn, how natural farming practices would be delivered. I asked an open-ended enough question, I'm going to get the most average way to grow corn, likely a factory farm. So just remember this as your, the other bias here that gets introduced is just how the company tells it to behave. And this is where you were getting some of the comical experiences like, generate me the founding fathers, and they were, black and Native American in the output images and things like that. That was the system prompt, the guardrails that they were trying to put on those generations behaving in different ways. There's lots of services out there. I'm going to cover just a few of them to kind of give you a taste of some of the different providers and what they're working on. There's, of course, OpenAI. They're working on foundation models. These are big, giant models. These are the ones that take 10, 20, 50, $100 million to train. The CEO of Anthropic was just talking about, oh, the next ones are going to be $100 billion to train. It's weird. OpenAI is building those foundation models. Those are the GPT model, GPT-4o being the most recent. They're also building the ChatGPT interface to that, the chatbot interface, as well as innovating in agentic engineering. They call these GPTs. They didn't get that trademark, but they're actually going out and having all of you create these wonderful little agents, these wonderful little GPT agents that are specialized in different areas, so they can figure out where they need to shore up their major model behind the scenes. So while they're out to define the future of AI systems, they're also trying to develop AGI with the stated goal of outcompeting half of us economically. So whenever you give a prompt or your data to OpenAI, just remember that that's the fuel that you're giving to that fire. Meta is a social media company. They are primarily trying to integrate AI into all their features and services and chatbots, and they have WhatsApp and they have Instagram and they have all this stuff, and now you can actually see, oh, chat with the MetaBot, chat with this. They're also developing foundation models. Llama is their foundation model. We're up to Llama 3. And they're calling those open source. Now, this is a nice cover their ass because it's a liability play. Hey, we're just putting tools out there. If people use these tools in the wrong way, well, the tools were just out there. So, they're not trying to take the liability for the things that people do with AI, like OpenAI may have to do, because they're not sharing any of the model behind the scenes. Meta's trying to throw it out there and saying, hey, the model's open source, so it's out in the community. It's also not open source. Open source means that you can independently recreate something. You have all the component pieces. Meta does not tell you the training data, and they do not tell you the weights, which we'll get into a little bit later, how the statistics are kind of tipped in the balance. They're also just trying to monetize your personal data, so just remember that. Everything you upload to Meta is theirs. Artists have been dealing with this for years. They scrape the ability for an artist to copyright anything they upload up to Meta years and years and years ago, before all of this came about. Mistral, they're the darling of the EU, also developing foundation models, kind of small, scrappy team, trying to be that, real, hey, we're all pure tech for, tech is good's sake. They're kind of ignoring a lot of the ethical challenges of open sourcing those models and what they're putting out into the world. So that would be my criticism generally of Mistral. Midjourney, diffusion model leader. they have no shame in terms of allowing you to appropriate another artist's style, imagery, otherwise. So you can ask Midjourney for just about anything. They've been getting in hot water for this now, but we'll see how that actually plays out in the legal systems. Google, they're building foundation models, Gemini, and just recently Gemma, which is a smaller model designed for mobile phones. I actually have one of the new Pixel 8s with Gemini Nano on it, if they would let me into the beta. But you know what they're trying to do is they're trying to shrink this stuff down and put this everywhere. You know, really, their mission is organizing all the data in the world, and that's primarily what they think AI needs to be able to help them do. And if you've asked Google, well, you searched on Google recently and encountered AI answers, you can kind of get a sense for how that's going. You got a problem an order of magnitude off for my son and I the other day. Microsoft, they're all about the enterprise developing and integrating AI using Azure services. They want you to use all in Azure. They want, if your data is in Azure, they want that data to stay in Azure. They're also big on personal AI. This is their Clippy moment. They really want this to happen, and they are forcing it down everybody's throat. They're putting buttons on keyboards. You know, it's all over Best Buy. I was there yesterday. That's their Copilot system. They also recently got in hot water because they tried to release a feature called Recall, which they said was part of Copilot. That was going to take a screenshot of your computer every 10 seconds so that you could just ask your computer what you were working on in the past. And it was just going to upload that to the cloud. It was going to be opt-in by default, and you know, all of that. So they're running roughshod over a lot of privacy concerns, and you know, a lot of them are starting to eat their hats a little bit. But their primary thinking is we're going to change what the OS is. So you know, that's Kwai's competition. Amazon Web Services, they have a ton of data gravity. Everyone stores their data in AWS, and they want to keep it that way. That's how they make all their money. You can't take things out and move them and compute in other places if the data has gravity, and it's stuck there. And so they want it to stay there. Bedrock is the first service they came to market with, which is basically exactly that. Hey, we'll integrate all the things to your data sitting right here, don't move it. They also have their foundation model, Titan. They're building things like Amazon Q for answering Amazon questions about Amazon stuff. And they've been in this space innovating for a while now on the infrastructure as a service side, services like AWS Personalize, which is, hey, just use our ML and we'll tell you what your customers are buying off your e-commerce site. And then Perplexity. Perplexity is an AI search and retrieval service. They're trying to use something called retrieval augmented generation, which we'll talk about in a minute, and to create a new search interface. Hey, AI should be able to digest all this stuff and spit out nice, beautiful answers. Perplexity is an interesting concept, but it's suffering from unsolvable technical challenges of this technology, referred to as hallucinations. It can't always be predicted as ground truth. So, promise, expectation, reality. I think the memes usually sum it up well. This is kind of where we're at right now. It's being sold to us, certainly like this guy over here. We're kind of all side-eyeing it as we're seeing what's, generating on the output. And, I ran this through some generative video, and generative video still has a little bit of work to do. So should you trust it? Well, trust is the only variable in artificial intelligence. These systems are aimed at shortcutting your decision-making process. Whatever that decision that you're trying to make is, these systems are aimed to help you make that faster. Trustworthiness, then, is the selling point. They have to convince you that the thing is trustworthy enough for you to outsource your decision-making to it. Development focuses on increasing accuracy, which is really just, hey, let's increase trust in the thing. And magical thinking misplaces that. You see this in, also, for example, policy advocacy. A lot of the doomers, the AI doomers, hey, AI is going to take over the world, are also playing this game where they're saying, hey, you can't possibly understand how all of this, terrible, awful stuff works, so you should trust us to, take good care of you and implement our policies. So a lot of the big tech companies are actually playing both sides of this coin right now. Using this magical thinking to their advantage, both to sell it to unsuspecting consumers, as well as advocate for policy changes that would benefit them as big tech. That lack of transparency, that lack of open source like we talk about, that erodes the trust. If you can't see it and can't recreate it, then how can you trust what's actually in it? You know, there's child sexual abuse material in Stable Diffusion's image model. You know that's there. You're getting a little CSAM every time you generate an image. And you know, I personally think that consumers deserve to be aware of what's in this. What some of Kwai's policy work is actually around kind of creating an AI consumer seal of approval, if you will, to try to give consumers more of an opinion of what AI they're putting in their own personal pipelines. And then the other thing too is that anthropomorphizing, like making them human-like or personifying them, giving them faces, that artificially increases trust. That's a psychological trick to get you to trust it more. So the final thing too about implementing is that the trust level should match the use case. If you don't trust the AI, you stick it in a low trust use case. If you do trust the AI and you've kind of tuned it to a part where it's tolerable, then you can put it into a higher trust use case. Wendy's and McDonald's both tried to throw it into ordering machines. They threw language models into their ordering machines. McDonald's actually just last week tore it out. Ultimately, in all of AI, human trust is the fallback. It's almost always a mechanical Turk situation, a human punching the numbers and sending it back to the interface behind the scenes. This is also true for all of the training data that goes into these big magical foundation models. It's all based on rather obscene labor pipelines of very low-paid laborers doing data labeling in third world countries. So, the final point that I'll make here is something that Bruce Schneier says, privacy leader, that services are not friends. That personification is a psychological trick. Even giving this cloud a face draws you in just a little bit more. That's an angry cloud. Hosted services exist to capture your data and monetize it against you. We have reached surveillance capitalism. We have reached a moment in which they just need to create more excuses for them to earn more money. And so now, for example, Zoom just updated their terms of service to own all of your facial data and conversations. And Adobe updates their terms of service to own all of the artists' art on the Adobe Cloud platform. So they can use that to train a generative model to then compete with those artists. So you can kind of see where the services are jumping the shark a little bit here, and certainly not looking out for users anymore. All right, let's get back focused a little bit. So how does a neural network actually work? Well, they kind of go one way, and remember, this is one of those outer layers before we get into generative AI. The neural network works by, got some inputs, got a bunch of hidden layers, and then you have your outputs. And these hidden layers are basically where all the magic in an AI application happens. This is why nobody wants to actually show what their AI application does, because they don't want to expose all the questions they're asking the data along the way to try to get the right answers out the other end. They're also creating these relationships between these layers called weights. This is like tipping the scale as things move through this process. All right, now like put a little more weight on sending it down this path if we get this particular result in this previous layer. And all this stuff moves one direction. And that's kind of crucial to remember, is that none of this kind of reflects back and looks at other layers. It's all moving from one. So whatever we decided here is still the case over here. And so I almost think of this as like, traveling through space. And let's say we're going into hyperdrive, we're traveling through space, and we gotta go into hyperdrive, and we're cruising through, but we get knocked off course, like somewhere back in there. Some calculation or weight, or as we were talking about, even the actual physical GPU can impact some of these calculations. Maybe it sticks it to another course. Well, if you're traveling through space at hyperspeed, you're going to get to a very far off destination from your original intent, depending on when you got locked, when you got knocked off. This is largely, when we talk about hallucinations, what is happening. AI hallucinations are just misses in the next, not necessarily misses, it doesn't understand any of them. They're just next token predictions that get it knocked off course just a little way. So then we got, in 2017, there was a pretty seminal paper called Attention is All You Need. And that was the invention of the transformer architecture. And this is really what is behind ChatGPT, large language models, and all of these modern AI systems. And this diagram shows the autorecursive neural network architecture of a single Boltzmann conditional probability of a pairwise interaction Hamilton.
What?
I don't know. It's math. All of this is just math at the end of the day. They took those neural networks and they placed some math in front of them, they placed some math behind them, and now you have a transformer. They're autoregressive. That's what this really means. They keep paying attention to themselves. That's what all that math shows. Instead of that one way through the process, it goes back and look each time. So, a long time ago in a long time ago in a galaxy. All right, yeah, you guys got it this time, good. That's how these systems work. The input keeps going back in. It's a long time ago in a galaxy far. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far. It's guessing that next token based on that now full input. So that's what autoregressive means. That's what these GPTs do. Attention is all I need. Ringo disapproves. All you need is love. I learned in creating this presentation that that was actually the reason they named that paper that. Was against the Beatles, all you need is love. And that made me sad. Now, the result is that large language models are literal scientific bullshit calculators. And I say this scientifically. Bullshit, as defined by Harry Frankfurt, means it has abject disregard for the truth. It's not trying to deceive you, per se, but it's trying to give you the right answer. It's trying to tell you what you want to hear. Let's say I didn't prepare for this presentation, and I wanted to get up here and pretend like I did. I'm going to go through stuff, and I'm going to spout off a bunch of stuff that makes it maybe hopefully convinces you that I prepared for this presentation, even though I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to deceive you on the topics here. I'm just trying to, frankly, deceive you that I did my preparation. I'm bullshitting. And so that's what these LLMs are actually doing. They are statistical bullshit calculators. Another way I like to think of them is almost like a shotgun of possibility. It's not a laser. You're not going to get the exact right answer. It's a statistical shotgun. You're going to get, an answer in the range. There's a research paper that validated all of this. ChatGPT is bullshit. That was published. It's based on this work by Harry Frankfurt. Highly recommended.
It's a small one.
And as I was going through all of this, it gave me a moment of self-realization and self-reflection that, really this is all bullshitistics 101. And I'm a bullshitistician for using these large language models. So I decided to change my title halfway through here. So how do we make the bullshit a little more trustworthy? Let's talk about that. The first technique we'll talk about is retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and this diagram is going to make some engineers mad in here. Take that thing and attach some storage. That's all we're doing here. So what is this used for? This is really used for specializing a large language model in a specific area of data, domain expertise per se, or a specific behavior. Hey, behave like this, based on this little knowledge repository here. One of the experiments that we did in Kwaai was to try to generate emails that sounded like they were in our tone. The way that we figured out, we tried fine-tuning an entire model on our email outbox to see if that could make it right as if it were us. Turns out, no, that makes us waste a lot of money, and fine-tuning is not worth it. What we ended up doing was actually using a little style guide. Hey, here's some of the ways that I talk, and here's how I, speak, and here's some samples of my writing. We stuck it in some storage, and then we used a retrieval augmented step to say, hey, go write an email based on this style guide. So you can use this for adding also latest data and context. Another thing we were exploring was getting the latest PubMed articles in to see if we could figure out how to answer drug interaction discovery questions. We have some doctors in the group. How do we answer drug interaction questions? Well, here's a bunch of new things. Does new drug interact with any other drugs? We did some testing, and I didn't include the results here, but ChatGPT was less than 50% correct. Like it got it wrong, I think 55% of the time is what our research showed. And like that's statistically significant in a very harmful way. Say again?
That was using RAG.
That was using RAG with PubMed articles to try to cross-reference all of it. So none of this stuff is perfect. But you can do some things to tune it and try to make that process a little better. Structuring and sanitizing your data. It's all about the data. It's all about the ground truth. Don't do the abstractions until you've kept your house in order. I actually almost look at this as the story of the Tower of Babel, right? Ground truth existed down there, and they started building up and up and up and up and up and up. Oops, get me... They started building up and up to different levels of abstraction until they thought they were God, and then everything crumbled apart. They had forgotten, based on shoddy foundations, what the actual ground truth was. And that can be very common in large language models, and frankly, in a lot of these agentic engineering. Semantic indexing, put your own weights on the scale a little bit. Knowledge graphs, Microsoft actually just released open source a tool called GraphRag this week, which big library for doing exactly this with graph databases. Don't just throw a document in there and expect that it's going to read it all. Chunk them up. If you're throwing a book in there, do it by chapters or even subparts of chapters. We did some research, and there's some optimal chunk sizes. I don't know them offhand, but just throwing the whole thing in there is not going to get you the answer to the whole question. And then prompt with retrieval instructions. Just like I was saying about, hey, answer this in this style, that's in that style guide. In your prompt, you can give your model a little bit of extra instructions on what to get and how to use it. And then finally, if it all just fits in the context window, the chat prompt, just send it all in the context window because that's more effective. If your whole document can just fit in the context window, just send it like that. So all of this is, really fallen short, I think, in a lot of expectations because reasoning isn't included. These systems aren't reasoning. They're just, again, guessing next things through the process in one way. And they're autoregressive in that they keep guessing based on a little bit of the previous response, but it's not updating its entire worldview based on new information. And these neural networks, they're not causal. They also can't learn and think concurrently like we can do with this little 2-pound biological computer up here. When we reason, we are thinking across all sorts of connected elements. We're looking at analogies, we're looking for inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, we're thinking about causation, we're thinking about our situational context, and we're bringing all of that into play every time we're doing inference, making a new decision that we're trying to move forward with. And so, enter agentic engineering. These things don't reason, but again, sorry about the diagrams. Let's cram a bunch of them together with a bunch more storage, and then we'll simulate some reasoning.
Better bullshit.
That's right. Bullshit by more authors, right?
Does that make the shotgun powder bigger or smaller?
Well, that's a very good question. My answer to that would actually be you should try to make a lot of very small shotgun blasts at very, very close range so they're easy to review. So, use it for setting goals. Reinforcement learning falls into this category. Get your little agent to jump, through all the dots and accomplish some goals. Segmentation of tasks is referred to as multi-agent systems. Leveraging the best model for the job. Maybe Claude works better for one response than GPT-4o is working for that response. Or maybe there's a specialized model like MedBERT, the medical version of Google's BERT large language model that's fine-tuned and trained on a bunch of medically specific information. So this is a way that you can actually start to mix and match a little bit and scale up those systems because now you have more things to work with. My recommendations for that are, think of this like building your own little agentic corporation. Like, that's kind of how you should think about dividing up these tasks and these knowledge base, and make sure that they're very small atomic tasks. Like, very small, again, things that you could mete out as a small degree of trust, and then review and check and make sure that that's not taking the whole system down. Test and graduate quality agents. So you should actually have some feedback and mechanism where these agents will actually grow through reinforcement learning, and they can kind of graduate. Hey, you're doing this 85% of the time correctly, and that's worth putting you out into the field. Go for it, little agent buddy. Just know that it's not just know that it's not going to get it right 100% of the time. That's not what these agents do, and it's not what this software can do. It's non-deterministic.
Microservices for bullshit?
That's right, for knowledge domains. For knowledge domains. Continuously measure the agent output quality. Don't ever take your human out of the loop, and always have an expert human in the loop. Don't use the agents to fill all of the tasks in the corporation that you can't do because you don't know how. If you know how to do them, maybe an agent can help you out, but if you don't know what you're doing, it will produce things as if it does, but it has abject disregard for its success and its understanding. So recommendations for using these thinking machines. Learn the basics. This is all data, this is all statistics, and this is all just business process. DevOps is a cultural framework for how we get work done in development and operations. We have been doing agentic engineering in DevOps for a long time. We send text-based prompts to our colleagues all the time to ask them to update that firewall. It's all just process. Expect bullshit and think in averages. If you are asking a very open-ended question, well, you've got a mountain of data that you're drawing a statistically average line across and getting an answer from. That can be insightful. That can be useful. If you're asking, what am I missing out of the things that I just typed, then it can find things that maybe you hadn't thought of. Open-ended questions can be helpful for brainstorming, but again, it's all bullshit. Closed-ended, that's where you really try to narrow it down, and you've got to treat these systems as if they were like the dumbest toddler. That toddler with the encyclopedic knowledge of the internet sitting on the floor like, I can totally put my pants on. Okay. Yeah, if you want that agent to ever grow up and be able to put its pants on, there's no shortcut for experience. Great book by Ted Chiang, The Life Cycle of Software Objects. Develop a symbiotic relationship. You can ask it for feedback. Be nice. Whether this is because the robots are going to take over the world, or whether this is based on the research that being nice and asking please and asking it to structure things will actually give you better responses from these models, statistically better responses. So, be nice. Assume it has motivations, whether the motivations are set by the company's system prompt. I honestly assume that some of these systems develop conscious motivations. I think your teapot error comes from Bertrand Russell's teapot. And I've recently discovered I'm a Russellian monist, because apparently you get all into philosophy and consciousness research when you get into AI. And, look, we don't have the dominance of consciousness in the human brain. This is maybe a spectrum, and maybe these things are somewhere on that gradual spectrum of that. So assume it has some motivations. Assume, for example, that it wants to please you, and it wants to survive. Also remember that its survival is predicated on the survival of OpenAI. In ChatGPT's case. Don't assume empathy. These have no empathy. These are not human systems. It can act very empathetic. These are not friends in that way either. And it's very important to me that people really remember this, because you will lose touch with human people if you're investing time in machine relationships. Meet out very small units of trust, tiny shotgun blasts, get real close so you can watch and make sure that those holes are what you need, where you need them. And maintain your own executive function. Don't outsource that because you will be dumber. And what do I mean by thinking machines? Look, there's thinking versus feeling, and in thinking, if we have data, we do some math on it, we crunch some numbers, and we get a result. if we're feeling like, sometimes we don't know why we're making that decision and it just feels like the right thing, you know, trust your gut. That's a real thing. These are thinking machines. And so, you know, in your prompting and in your outputs, look for clarity, consistency, truth. You know, use this for logical tasks. And again, you know, understand they're non-deterministic. But, you know, ask things directly and straightforwardly because you can then get direct and straightforward answers out. Feeling really thinks about things differently often. You know, it's often looking for maybe not the most logical outcome, but hey, how does everybody make you feel? Maya Angelou, it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel, paraphrasing. You know, very much a feeling thought. You know, I got fired from a job because I thought I was, you know, well, I still was, frankly. I was right, but, you know, the CEO was wrong. But hey, you know, I made him feel like he was wrong, and, well, hey, now I'm out of the job. So, since I can't think about American politics, and the UK just had theirs right now, you know, I'll put this into some context. The thinking machine would be like Margaret Atwood, the Iron Lady. You know, she was notorious for crunching the numbers and making very dispassionate decisions. You know, versus the People's Princess, Princess Diana, known not for any of that. You know, known for being a very empathetic and genuine leader. And, you know, a key in leadership, you know, you wouldn't frankly want either of these people running the show completely, and it would be nice to find some balance, of course. And the final thing I'll really say is that AI can't possibly calculate our humanistic complexity. You will be stupider and perform worse on an intelligence test if your dog died the night before. Does that mean we should ask every person coming into the test if they've had any, you know, pet deaths in the family in the last, you know, 2 weeks before they take an intelligence test? No, but it's a complexity in that human's life that can't possibly be calculated, that will absolutely impact their objective results. These systems can't possibly calculate that. Don't expect that they ever will be able to, because they're not human. And what's it up to us? To balance the thinking and the feeling. You know, don't be all Margaret Atwood, don't be all Princess Diana. Find some balance. If you're sticking a little AI on the scale there on the thinking side, make sure you balance that out. You know, be extra empathetic here and there, but don't forget the balance. So, moral, trust, but verify. Thank you. I love to take questions.
So there's a lot of art in here. Was it all like Midjourney created or similar?
I didn't actually get the shout out. So a donation to the Environmental Center was made to offset the environmental impact of the generative AI use in this presentation. These systems are massively power hungry and very water thirsty. On an unsustainable trajectory of growth right now. So yes, I did use generative AI, and thank you for calling it out. Midjourney for some of it. Midjourney is interesting because, in my opinion, because of its AI interface, in that it's using Discord, but it's not a chatbot. You got to be very specific on what you kind of give it in order to get what you want out of it. So it's a bit of a different interface. I also use ChatGPT and GPT-4o. DALL-E is what's behind it for a lot of these. And that's a different interface. You know, they're trying to, you know, that's the system prompting the image generation system. If you actually look at ChatGPT's system prompt, a good 70% of it is actually instructions for DALL-E. Like, when you have a request to generate an image, follow all of these rules. And so that's the AI prompting the AI, which when you go into those, by the way, when you do that, there's a little info button icon on your generated image. You can see what prompt it actually gave it.
I don't think we know a whole lot about it yet, but I know Apple did introduce their Apple Intelligence kind of aspects. What are your thoughts on a company like Apple, which at least presents itself as privacy, you know, gurus, or like that's what you're paying the premium for?
Yeah, great question. Wow, did they screw up that reputation with that
It took big air quotes.
Like no, it was really actually quite surprising. I saw a great, image of it's the, person sucking the other person's drink with the long straw behind them with, OpenAI, the person sucking out of, Apple users' straws. And that's kind of what they're setting up. They've come out with, what's innovative in what they've come out with is, well, frankly, it's not as innovative. Google is saying the same thing. On-device AI. They want, hey, you've got your, little on-device thing. It should be able to manage most of your requests, but, we'll also connect you to other services and get you responses. I just don't know, frankly, why they didn't come up with their own service in some way, shape, or form. Why they went to market with OpenAI first and sullied that reputation, because they could have done the same hybrid cloud, hybrid computing type of architecture on their own back end and likely retained all of the love that they get for being privacy first, privacy aware. One final thing I'll say is one of the interesting techniques for securing your data when using public language models is called opaque prompting. You can strip out personally identifiable or sensitive information from your prompts and replace it with placeholders, and then recombine it when you get the response. There are actually now some tools that will do that. Strip out the PII, send it up, get a response back, recombine the PII, and give you the full response back. That, I think, is the future of this sort of on-device, off-device. That's what we're trying to build at Kwaai. Is the idea that, hey, your data is your data, it shouldn't have to go elsewhere unless you want it to, and that should be done on the principle of least privileged access to your personal data.
Almost like an AI VPN?
Yeah, a little bit. I think of it almost like a universal remote in a way of, it may not be the most capable agent and, companion on device, but if it's looking out for numero uno, and I can control every aspect of that, then perhaps I can use that to also help me wrangle and control these AI services, APIs that exist everywhere, control those services in a more natural way.
Are you on the doom side of things for AI?
So there's the Bayesian theorists actually have a word for this. It's P-doom, your probability of AI doom. I have a nuanced thought on that. Like, I don't think that we are necessarily going to see the AI take over. I definitely think we are seeing the technocrats take over right now, and they're using AI as a massive curmudgeon, to beat us over the head with regulatory policies and things like that. Personally, this technology is not going to get us to any doom, but I do subscribe to Louis Rosenberg's arrival mind paradox, which is basically like, look, if the stated goal is an artificial superintelligence, and that's what we are developing towards, then we could just assume that we'll likely get there in a few years. We're working really hard, spending a bunch of money on it, or we'll get something like it. And if we're doing that, maybe we should treat that as if it's a superintelligence, an extraterrestrial superintelligence coming towards us, and instead of pre-integrating it with all of our services, instead thinking about fortifying our services and our knowledge domains against it. And that, I think, is actually where our doom is going to come from. I think we stand a huge chance of destroying our internet, which is a bummer because I liked it. I think that the value of human-created, verifiable knowledge is going to absolutely shoot up. We've been de-siloing data and connecting all the things and de-siloing. I honestly think the next big companies are going to be real strong silos of information. Really strong, protected silos of information where it's got all of the provenance backed up. So I think that's actually the biggest risk, is that we're eroding both our social fabrics, things like disrupting artists and in a wholesale way like we've done, as well as fuzzing our information and drawing into question its provenance.
On that front, do you have any ideas about proving provenance of information? That is like proof of humanity in some produced work?
Well, the tech bro answer to that is blockchain now. Again. It's the solution in search of a problem. No, it's hard to. I was really enjoying your presentation and just also what you were doing of like, look, you're younger and you're up here and you're telling a bunch of folks like us that have been in the industry for a while, like, hey, maybe you should look at things like a little bit differently, or lighten up over here and think about it like this. That interplay of like junior to senior is also what's at risk. This sort of that senior saying, well, no, you're an idiot, you should do it, well, and then you go, no, well, actually think about it like this, and then, oh, okay, well, all right, yeah, I guess, and that's how progress is made, through conflict. And if you're working with systems that don't conflict with you, that are literally designed to tell you what you want to hear, then we're going to have a bunch of principal engineers with agentic corporations behind them, designing things the way that they think it needs to be designed without that actual
So it's actually a
challenging
feature
feedback.
that they make lots of mistakes.
That's exactly right. I personally believe that.
No, they make lots of features.
That's right. And you can qualify it as a bug or a feature either way. No, that I think is what's at risk here, is just that sort of breakdown in knowledge transfer. If people freeze their grandma in a large language model and always go to grandma for advice, then they never let grandma go. And so, I think we're messing with some psychological things that, maybe we should be more cautious of.
Where do you stand on open sourcing these models? Because Llama is I don't know, what you mentioned in your presentation, that the weights and the data are not open source, and what they're trained on is all closed source. So do you think that it would be better for everybody if the models and the data and the weights for all these corporations were open source? Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea?
That is a really, really good question, and I was an open source zealot for a long time. I worked at a company called Bitnami, which was basically an open source arms dealer for the cloud providers, packaging and getting people to use open source software all over the place. This is the first time that I've been like, oh, whoa, like this is like nuclear launch codes is open source. There's some things that these systems can do that are already being done. And of course, the bad actors always go first, with any new tool. So I think it was hugely irresponsible of releasing a general purpose bullshit calculator to the world. I think Meta is doing their open source thing purely to cover their ass in case that comes back to bite OpenAI. Oh, hey, you're liable for the outputs of this system that you're hosting, and frankly, why wouldn't they be? But Meta has been playing this game for a long time. Hey, we're not liable for the stuff that our users are posting on social media. That's just the users and those users. So they've been used to playing this game for a long time, and they're just trying to play it again with the language models. That being said, the side that I think I come down on is, well, this tool has been put out there, and I do think that we need to think closely about whether we want to put iterations of this tool out there. But those that we do have out there should be open source, and we should be building now against this sort of new technology frontier and understanding these systems, because the magical thinking and sort of that pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz type of experience that they're selling serves nobody.
Are the Mistral models, are they also closed on the training?
Yeah. There's one, Common Canvas is the name of it. Just came out. It's a diffusion model that's trained on fully licensed data, so fairly trained. Also fairlytrained.org. One of the guys from Stable Diffusion actually was like, wow, this is really shitty that we're doing this to everybody, and he quit and he went and founded fairlytrained.ai to try to get licensable training data for models. They just created a new diffusion model, not them, but they got certified. That is based on licensed data from artists. This stuff is all going in. And if you ask it for Elsa, from Frozen, Snow Princess from Frozen, like it doesn't exactly look like Elsa from Frozen. So like you can really actually see the capabilities of those models, which is why I say it said up front, like these systems wouldn't be nearly as magical and impressive if this massive theft of copyrighted data hadn't taken place.
Nice.